He did not leave you with no answer. He left you with silence, and your mind kept trying to turn that silence into something kinder. That was the wound. Not just that he went quiet, not just that he never explained, but that part of you believed the right words from him would finally make the pain feel fair. So you waited longer than you want to admit. You replayed the last conversation. You looked at the message thread like there had to be one line you missed. You held your phone and told yourself maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe he needed time. Maybe this would make sense once he came back and said the one thing that could put your heart down gently. But his silence was already telling the truth. You just could not accept it yet because the truth felt harsher without a reason attached to it. And that is what hurt you so deeply. You were not only missing him, you were trying to solve the confusion he left inside you. Your mind does that when something hurts and stays unfinished. It starts searching for meaning because meaning feels easier to survive than rejection. So you did not just wait for him. You waited for relief. You waited for one clean sentence that would stop you from blaming yourself for the empty space. That is why no answer can become its own kind of trap. You start thinking the pain is still open because the conversation is still open. You start feeling like you cannot put it down yet because he has not explained what happened. But the cost begins there. You get quieter. You stop saying what you know. You become loyal to the version of the story that hurts you less. And little by little, you hand your peace to a man who is no longer even speaking. The hardest part is that you called it hope. But a lot of the time, it was your heart refusing to let silence mean what it meant. You were not waiting for just any explanation. You were waiting for the one that would let you keep loving him without feeling foolish. Because there were moments that made your hope feel reasonable. He was warm enough to confuse you, present enough to make the distance feel temporary. Maybe he looked at you in a way that made you feel chosen for a second. Maybe he said something tender once, and your mind kept returning to that version of him like it meant the silence after it could not be the full truth. That is what made this so hard to name. You were not holding on to nothing. You were holding on to the parts that made leaving feel too early. So when he disappeared, your mind did not go straight to acceptance. It went back to evidence. The good conversation, the soft night, the way he once seemed open, the almost answer, the feeling that there was something real here, even if he could not hold it consistently. And that hope had a very specific job. It kept trying to protect you from the sharper truth. Because if he could still explain it, then maybe you had not been dismissed. Maybe you had not been easy to put down. Maybe the silence was not the ending, just a delay. That is why you kept the door open in your mind long after he stopped walking through it. Not because you were weak, because the good moments kept resetting your pain. Each one made the pattern harder to trust. You told yourself you just needed clarity. But underneath that, there was something even more tender. You wanted his words to restore your dignity. Not because you needed a speech, because you needed proof that your heart had not been handled carelessly. You wanted him to show that what happened between you was not careless, even if he could not continue it. But when a man keeps giving you just enough warmth to make the cold feel confusing, hope stops feeling like comfort. It starts becoming the reason you cannot rest. The cost was not only that he stayed silent. The cost was that his silence started training you to abandon yourself. You checked your phone, then acted like you did not care. You started rewriting messages before sending them. Not to say what you really felt, but to make it smaller, softer, easier to answer. You were trying not to push him away, even while you were already the one being left in the dark. That is what this kind of confusion does. It makes you treat your need for clarity like it is the problem. So instead of saying, "This hurt me," you said less. Instead of asking, "What changed?" you told yourself not to make it heavy. Instead of trusting the ache in your chest, you kept managing his possible reaction to your pain. And little by little, your whole emotional life started organizing itself around an answer that never came. You would feel a flash of relief when your phone lit up, then shame for how fast your heart moved. You would tell yourself you were done, then lose an hour rereading old words, trying to find some hidden kindness in them. You were not just waiting. You were living in a question mark. That is the part people do not see. Silence does not only leave absence, it leaves labor. Your mind keeps working, filling gaps, excusing what hurts, trying to build closure out of fragments. And the contradiction was brutal. The more he withheld, the more carefully you handled him in your mind. The less he gave, the more guilty you felt for needing something clear. That is how you start becoming grateful for crumbs. Not because crumbs satisfy you, because starvation makes small things feel important. And the deepest cost was this: you lost access to the truth you already knew. You knew something was wrong. You felt it. But you kept waiting for the person hurting you to explain your pain back to you before you were allowed to trust it. The limit was not when you got angry. It was when you got tired of handing your peace to silence. Not tired of him, tired of what waiting was turning you into. Because there comes a point when you see it clearly. An explanation is not the same thing as repair. And words arriving late do not return the version of you that spent nights carrying what he would not name. So something in you begins to change quietly. You stop checking your phone like it holds your stability. You stop rehearsing the message you will send if he finally comes back. You stop building imaginary conversations where he says exactly what you needed, and you finally get to relax. Not because the ache vanishes, because you start seeing that the ache has been keeping you tied to a door that is not opening. That is the real shift. You stop asking his silence to become kindness. Your mind may still reach for meaning. That is human. It wants to finish the story in a way that hurts less. But now you understand something deeper. Closure was never inside his explanation. It was trapped inside your hope that he would handle your heart carefully after he already showed you he would not. And that changes the way you stand. You do not need to hate him. You do not need to prove he was cruel. You only have to stop treating his absence like unfinished love. Because it was not your job to keep translating what he refused to say. It was not your job to keep the connection emotionally alive by yourself. And it was never your job to stay suspended just because he left without courage. This is the quiet line. You can care that it hurt. You can care that it mattered. And still stop waiting for the explanation that keeps costing you more than the silence already did. And when you finally stop waiting for the explanation, you do not lose as much as you feared. You get pieces of yourself back. Your breath comes back first. Not all at once, but in small moments. In the morning when you realize you did not reach for your phone before you reached for yourself. In the quiet second where his silence no longer decides the temperature of your day. In the relief of not having to decode what is not being said. Then your voice comes back. The honest one. The one that knew this hurt before your mind started making excuses for it. The one that does not need a perfect ending to tell the truth. You stop saying maybe when your body already knows. You stop calling confusion a bond. You stop protecting the version of him that costs you your clarity. And something even softer returns too. Your warmth. not the warmth that kept making room for what wounded you. The warmth that belongs in your own life, in your own room, in your own body, in the parts of you that had been waiting for you to stop leaving with him in your mind. Because that is the real return. You stop treating his explanation like the missing piece of your peace. You see that peace was never on the other side of his words. It was on the other side of believing what his silence already showed you. That does not make you cold. It makes you steadier. You can still feel the loss. You can still wish he had handled it differently. But you no longer need him to come back and name the damage before you are allowed to heal from it. And that is dignity. Not pretending it did not matter. Not pretending you are untouched. Just refusing to keep your heart in a waiting room for a man who already left it there too long.